Now coming to this timestamp ordering protocol, what it is trying to do is, it has already fixed up some timestamp to all the, let's say, transactions. Let us say this is the order in which the transactions have arrived. Then it has given the timestamps to each transaction in such a way that this one is going to get the least number and this one is going to get the highest number, after fixing up its mind that this is the only serial schedule to which all the possible schedules should be conflict serializable to. So what I mean to say is, once it has fixed up this order, it is going to allow only the schedules which are conflict equivalent to this particular schedule, right? Then what happens is, even though you are having lot of schedules which are conflict serializable, it is going to allow only the conflict serializable schedules which are equivalent to this particular schedule, right? Which means it is going to allow only a subset of schedules which are conflict serializable. We should be allowing all the conflict serializable schedules in general, but then this particular this timestamp ordering protocol is going to allow only a subset of it, right? And what does this timestamp write rule says is, even if there is some schedule which is not conflict equivalent to this particular serial schedule, then also it will try to allow such schedule, right? So I'll just take an example and explain you what it really means. I hope you understood what is the timestamp ordering protocol trying to do. It is going to order all the transactions in this order, and it is going to allow only the schedules which are conflict equivalent to this particular schedule, right? So even if it is conflict serializable, it is not going to allow. So what I mean to say is, let us say there is a schedule which is conflict serializable to this, let us say all Tn. Now we have got a schedule which is conflict equivalent to this serial schedule, and so that is also a conflict serializable schedule, but still our timestamp ordering protocol will not allow that schedule. Got it? It will allow only the schedules which are equivalent to, conflict equivalent to this particular order. So once it has given some order, it will fix its mind that only those schedules will be allowed, and if there is any deviation, it will not allow it. But then Thomas Wright rule will try to allow some more schedules which are not just the schedules which are allowed by Thomas ordering, this timestamp ordering. Now let's see this Thomas Wright rule. Now in this case, we are going to ignore outdated writes, right? It is called as Thomas Wright rule. So just take this example. Now let's say here timestamp of T1 is 1 and timestamp of T2 is 2, right? Now if this is the case, then what does timestamp ordering protocol do? It will try to execute the schedules only if they are conflict equivalent to T1 followed by T2, the serial schedule, which means it will try to allow the schedules which are conflict equivalent to this particular schedule. T1 should happen first and then T2, right? So which means RA, WA and then WA, right? Now if you observe this, according to the timestamp ordering protocol, it will just see first step is this. So first operation it will allow it. Now for the second operation it will check whether to allow it or not. Now it is a conflict. Now what does this conflict is saying? So it is being done by T1 first and then T2. Therefore in the conflicting order, T1 is happening first and then T2. So it is going to allow it, right? And next, when it comes to this operation, it has to check whether to allow this operation or not. Now it will check that there is a conflict between these two. Now what is this conflict trying to say? That T2 should happen first and then T1, but then it is T2 is having a greater timestamp, therefore it is supposed to happen next, isn't it? So every conflicting action should happen in the order of timestamps, right? But here it is not happening in the order of timestamps. T2 is happening first and then T1. Therefore, in case of timestamp ordering, this one will be rejected and this one will be rolled back. That is what is going to happen in timestamp ordering. Now, what does this Thomas Wright rule say is, you can allow such write because if you look at the meaning of it, if you look at the semantics of it, now if this would have been happening, See, this is what should happen, isn't it? Now if this has happened, then what would be the final value of A? The final value of A would be whatever has been written by T2. Let us say initial value of A is 10 and this write is trying to make the value of A as 20 and this write is trying to make the value of A as 30. Now if this is the order in which it has executed in this serial schedule, what would be the value of A? After executing everything, the value of A would have been 30, isn't it? Now if these actions have happened, now let's see what happens. First A is read and then T2 is writing the value of A. Now what will be the value of A? Initially value of A is 10. Now T2 is trying to make the value of A as 30. Therefore it would have been made as 30. And now coming to this, it is again trying to change it as 20, right? But then if you see this, what is 20? 20 is the temporary value that will be given to A, but finally it would be replaced with 30. But here anyhow you have replaced it with 30, therefore there is no need of writing this temporary value again, right? Now in this case, what would be the best thing? Without rolling back, anyway, even if you would have done this, there would be no effect on the database. That is why don't do this, right? So in case of Thomas write rule, it is saying that whenever you have such a write, right, anyway since it would have been replaced by this, if you do it in this order T1 followed by T2, you just ignore this. You just ignore this and continue this transaction or continue this schedule as if nothing has happened. No need of rejecting and roll back. So what is the advantage of this? This schedule will also be allowed even though it is not allowed by timestamp ordering protocol. Therefore, Thomas write rule is bit flexible in the sense it is not going to roll back unnecessarily. In this case, the best option would be don't do this modification. This modification is supposed to be done in the middle and finally this value has to be retained there. Anyway, this value is already written there and this modification which should have been done in the middle is now just ignored. Now you just ignore it and continue the schedule as if nothing has happened. That is what Thomas write rule is going to say. Now Thomas write rule is going to say outdated writes, if you get anything, then ignore it. So which means this one should have been done earlier. Now it is being done late. So since it is late, just ignore it. No need of rolling it back and again doing it at later point in time. Therefore that is why if you look at the timestamp compared to timestamp ordering, Thomas write rule is going to allow more number of schedules. Got it? Okay. Now let's see what are the types of actions or what is the difference between this timestamp ordering and Thomas write rule. See it here. Now what are the transactions or what are the actions from different transactions which will be allowed in timestamp ordering protocol and then Thomas write rule. Now if you observe it, let us assume that there are two transactions T1 and T2 in such a way that timestamp of T1 is less than timestamp of T2. Now what is the meaning of it? If there are any conflicting actions, in every conflicting action case, T1's action should be carried out first, then only T2's action according to the timestamp ordering protocol. Now according to the Thomas write rule, you follow the same convention that in case of any conflicting actions, T1's action should be carried out first, then T2, with a small exception. What is the exception? If there are any outdated writes, you just leave them or ignore them. Now as per this rule, what are the types of conflicts which will not be allowed by timestamp ordering protocol? Now see this. If there is any conflict, let us say there is a conflict read and write. If there is any conflict in which the 2's action, which means transaction T2's action is happening first, then that will not be allowed, isn't it? Therefore it will not be allowed by timestamp ordering protocol. The reason is there is a conflicting action and in this conflicting action transaction T2's action is happening first, therefore it will not be allowed. And here also it is a conflicting action and in this conflicting action also transaction T2's action is happening first, so it is also not allowed. And what about this? Again not allowed. Why? Transaction T2's action is happening first. Got it? And now what are the allowed actions? So if see, all the conflicting actions in which T1 is going to happen first will definitely be allowed, which means if you say something like this, let's say read 1 of A and write to of A, it will be allowed. The reason is, even though it is a conflicting action, transaction T1's action is happening first. Got it? And similarly, it is going to allow definitely this. So write 1 of A and read 2 of A, which means even though this is a conflicting action, transaction T1's action is going to happen first, therefore it will be allowed. And similarly, write 1 of A followed by, this will also be allowed. Even though it is conflicting action, transaction T1's action is happening first, so it will be allowed, right? And similarly, this will be allowed. Anyway, read is never going to be a conflict, so all the non-conflicting actions are anyway going to happen, right? So if you observe this, these three are not allowed in this timestamp ordering protocol. If you get any of these combinations in a schedule, you are going to stop it and you are going to roll back, right? And that is going to be a problem. Why? Every rollback is a problem, isn't it? Now if you compare it with the Thomas Wright rule, the number of unallowed moves are going to reduce, right? If you observe this, now for every conflict it is also going to do the same thing, with only one exception, that outdated writes will be allowed, which means whenever you get a conflict between this, see, same thing is going to happen. For every conflicting move, always T1's action should happen first. If it is not going to happen, it is going to not allow it. So it does not allow this one because T2's action is happening first in this conflict, and again there is a conflict in which T2's action is happening first, so it is not going to allow it. But then coming to this particular action, now if you observe it, what does it say? So T2's action, write of A, is going to happen first, and then T1's action is going to happen next. Let's say this is T2 and then this is T1, right? Now what should have happened? Since T1's timestamp is less compared to T2, the actual order should have been T1 should do its write first and then it should have been overwritten by T2. This is the actual order in which it should have been happening. Now if it would have happened this way, then the final write would have been done by T2. Therefore, what does Thomas Wright rule say? Since this is outdated, just ignore it, but don't roll back the transaction. Therefore, that is why even this type of action, which means W2 of A and W1 of A, is going to be allowed with just one minor modification, that this particular action will just be ignored. It will not be carried out, right? And the transaction will not be rolled back. Therefore, transaction will be rolled back only in these two cases, in case of Thomas Wright rule, and transaction will be rolled back in any of these three cases in case of timestamp ordering protocol. Therefore, Thomas Wright rule is going to allow more schedules compared to this one, right? All the schedules which are containing this kind of moves will be allowed in Thomas Wright rule, but it will not be allowed there. Now if you look at the allowed moves, you can put all these three here as well, right? Which means this will be allowed here. So whatever was allowed in this timestamp ordering protocol will already be allowed in Thomas Wright rule. Along with them, this will be allowed. So which means if you are going to do any outdated writes, that will be allowed with a simple modification that that particular outdated write is just ignored. Got it?